What's going on, YouTube? We live in a time where crossovers are king, so brands are introducing a ton of new nameplates to make sure they have something for everyone. This all-new Mercedes GLB is one of those models, filling the space between the swoopy GLA and GLC with something boxier and unique. Now, of course, this review is only possible thanks to our friends at James Motor Company, so make sure to visit their dealership or check out their website if you are looking for any new Mercedes. So with that all said, let's see if this is the Mercedes crossover to get. So starting things off here with the exterior styling. Any similarities it shares under the skin to other Mercedes models is certainly not reflected in the way it looks. Besides for the flagship G-Wagon, this is the only Benz that could be characterized as boxy, which is seen particularly in the very upright grille design. This is the standard front end, but there is also an AMG line package offered, which substantially changes not just the grille, but also the lower bumper areas. However, as far as the headlights, their design stays the same no matter which model you choose. As you can tell, these are fully LED headlights, and for $900 you can add adaptive abilities and auto dimming. Standard models also have fog lights, but the AMG line does without them. As far as the rest of the styling, you can really tell just how squared off things are, especially in the side profiles. Now dimensionally, this is sized much closer to the GLC than the GLA, since it's only 1.7 inches shorter, though something about the styling does make it look smaller than it actually is. And then around back, it is pretty rugged to look at, with black cladding, a large rear window, and LED taillights that set low down on the body. And then finally at the bottom, you do have a chrome piece with two integrated exhaust outlets. So all in all, the styling of this GLB will not be everybody's cup of tea, but that's exactly the point. It is designed to appeal to a different person than the GLA, which is something I think it'll be successful at doing. Now moving on to the wheels, there are quite a few options as you'd expect. You can probably tell that these are the base 18-inch alloys, but there are also 3 19-inch options and 2 20-inch options available. Heading up to the mirrors, they are always heated, but power folding and auto dimming are part of the premium package. Additionally, blind spot monitoring is further available for $550. Now in regards to the other safety systems, Mercedes does also throw in automatic forward emergency braking with pedestrian detection as standard equipment. And then choosing the driver's assistance package will give you active lane keeping assist, evasive steering assist, and active BSM, as well as the advanced adaptive cruise control system called Active Distance Assist Distronic. But anyways guys, that's all there is to look at here on the outside. So now let's go ahead and see how much space and luxury is inside the cabin before we take it out for a test drive. So on the new GLB, you do have Mercedes' latest key fob. However, you are going to have to pay extra if you want the smart entry system. As far as remote start, that is included standard for 3 years via the Mercedes Me application. Now, of course, to get inside the actual vehicle itself, all you have to do is just grab the handle since there is a sensor, and your mirrors will electrically fold out as well. Alright, so taking a look here inside this brand new GLB, you're going to notice there is some family influence from that new A-Class and CLA that were introduced earlier in the year. Now talking about your color and material options, you do have quite a few since this is a Mercedes after all. So what you're going to start out with is the MBUX synthetic leather. That's what we have here. And of course is standard. You've got the option of black or macchiato color schemes, and then when you go for the AMG line, you can choose between Neva Gray or black with dynamic inserts. You also have the option of real leather. That comes in some different colors. So you have black and Bahia brown, and then the AMG line has two-tone black and red or titanium gray. And then finally, in regards to your different trims, you have the spiral look trim or carbon structure trim standard, and then optional wood, two different varieties. Now turning over here to your door trim, it is very nicely appointed, especially since this is the base GLB. We have leatherette that goes all through here, as well as across the upper part with the double stitching details, so that looks pretty nice. Here we have some of that standard wood trim, or excuse me, standard spiral look trim. And then as far as our seats here, this is the 12-way power adjusting seat with 3-person memory seating. That is, of course, standard equipment. You also notice we have seat heating. That's available for a little under $600, and you can also add seat ventilation as well. All 4 of your windows are one-touch automatic. And then coming over here to the seat itself, like I said, this is the MBUX synthetic leather. Does have a nice look. You also notice you have your lumbar support as well as a manual thigh extension. Now beyond the door trim, as far as the rest of the material quality, you have a pretty good selection, even though this is considered an entry-level Benz. So across your upper dash here, this is all going to be finished in a soft touch plastic. You've got some more of this nice looking trim. You also have a piece of, I guess, imitation aluminum, but it looks very, very realistic. All through here is piano black trim. And then your hard touch plastics, there are some down through here, but like I said, they're reserved for all the lower areas that you don't really touch all that often. And everything does fit together very well. Of course, you do have standard push button start. And when you start it up here, you're going to notice not one, but 2 displays. Now, these 2 displays are part of your brand new MBUX system, just like in the A class. So what you have standard is 2 7-inch displays, but if you go for the premium package, which our model does have, both of these displays get upgraded to 10.25 inches to make this very nice, long-looking, seamless-looking display. Now, focusing on the gauges here exclusively, this is the latest version. So what you do is just control with this little touch-sensitive pad, and all 3 of these sectors here are fully customizable. So you can just swipe through, and as you can see, you've got a ton of different things you can put into each section, basically. You can even swipe over here and change different display modes. Like for instance, now we are in a full screen mode, kind of futuristic looking. So like I've said in past Mercedes with this system, this is one of the very best reconfigurable gauge clusters in the business because there's just so many different options. Now you could also get a head-up display, but on this lower end model we do not have it. Now coming back to your steering wheel, you do have electric power assisted steering, and all models will come with a leather wrapped steering wheel. As you can see, you do have, like I said, the touch sensitive buttons up here for this side, and then these are for the other display. We also do have standard rain sensing wipers on every model. And the steering wheel itself is manually tilt and telescoping. Heating is available as a $250 standalone option. Now as far as the shifter, just like every Mercedes model, you've got the column mounted shifter. So for drive, you just push down. As you can see, we do have paddle shifters. These are standard across the board. And then for reverse, you just push up the opposite direction. Now in this specific model here, we do have the regular backup camera with active trajectory. However, if you go for the driving assistance package, you'll have a 360-degree camera system, as well as the ability to automatically park in both vertical and parallel parking spots. And then for park, just press the P, and there is an electronic parking brake right over here. Now, kind of related to that shifter is the amount of storage you have here in this vehicle, because it's out of the way, so it frees up all this area here in the center console. So we'll start out just right underneath here. As you can see, this is quite large. It goes down a really decent amount of space there, and it is felt lined. There is one USB port inside of it as well. Up in front of that, you kind of have some blank space. You have your cup holders right here. And then you have a really large bin up here in the front. This is also very deep. Has a nice rubberized material right there so things won't slide around. And then you've got a 12-volt outlet as well as your second USB Type-C port. Wireless charging is also available as a standalone option. Alright, so heading back here, this is your MBUX controller, one of the several ways you can control the system. What I'll focus on is not that, but our audio controls right over here. Now, standard on the base model, which is what we have here, is pretty much an unspecified sound system. They don't really go into the details about it. But you do also have the ability to get a 590 watt 12 speaker Burmester sound system if you want to have a more powerful system. But let's go ahead and sample this standard version. So overall, I have to say, sound quality of this system is very good. Certainly doesn't sound basic or anything like that. Alright, so now we'll go ahead and roll on up here to our dual zone automatic climate control system. This, of course, is very simple. It looks pretty much identical to what we saw in the A-Class. So you just adjust your temperature with this toggle right there, and it does appear up there on the display. Most of the controls are located physically here. However, there are a few that you'll have to press the menu button for, and that's where it will all come up here digitally, so you can make adjustments up here if you prefer to do that for whatever reason. Now, this model here does not have the advanced ambient lighting with 64 colors, but if you did have that, of course you would have ambient lighting all around the cabin. But the coolest trick would be that these vents would be lighted as well. So when you adjusted the temperature to be hotter, they would glow red, and colder, they would glow blue. Alright, so now that brings us up here to our 10.25 inch main MBUX display. So we'll go ahead and take a look through a few of the features. Now, I won't be super detailed about it in this video because we will have a dedicated tech help video available if you want to learn more about the system. And a link to that is going to be in the video description. But basically, this is just the all-new system. You have brand new graphics. Everything about this system is brand new. Like I mentioned, a big thing about it is it's a touch display. You can control on the steering wheel, the touch pad, or via some really, really good AI voice commands. What I mean by AI is you can just talk to it with phrases like your "Hey Mercedes," that's the launch phrase, and then it will respond to different types of queries that you ask it in natural language. And of course, you do have standard Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, both on board. On this particular model, we're missing navigation. That's part of an additional package, the multimedia package. But when you select the optional navigation system, you will get the augmented reality navigation, which, as we've shown you in a few other Mercedes models, basically just shows you a live camera feed of what you're looking at out in the street, and then overlays the instructions right onto it, different arrows and street numbers and things like that. Very, very neat, very handy system. Now, coming on up here, we do have the optional auto dimming mirror. You do also have optional garage door openers, which we do not have. And then looking up here, you'll actually notice we are missing a moonroof. There is no standard size moonroof offered, so you go straight to a panoramic option available for $1,500. But anyways, guys, that is going to conclude all of the front areas here in this all-new GLB. So now I'll go ahead and hand it off to Mason, who will check out the back seats. So checking out the new GLB's rear door trim, surprisingly you are going to have materials that do follow through from the front. So all of this area is leather padded, and even the upper portion is also a soft touch leatherette with stitching going through it. Down below that you have your door handle, as well as a large amount of door storage. And I do want to point out before I get in that the seats can slide back and forth. Now here in the center area, even though this is a cheaper Mercedes-Benz product, they don't really skimp on the features. So all GLBs will come with a rear vents as standard equipment. Down below that you have this little storage compartment. And further below that, you will find these pop-out outlets. So you have a 115 volt household style outlet back here, as well as 2 USB Type-Cs. And here in the center area, you have your traditional armrest with pop-out cup holders in the end. And up top, of course, you do have an assist grip as well as a coat hook. Now, as far as the rear legroom is concerned in this new GLB, this is one of the areas that I'm actually very impressed with. It actually comes in larger than the Mercedes GLC at 38 inches of rear legroom and 39 inches of rear headroom, which is quite a bit larger than its main rivals like the Audi Q3. It's actually about 2 inches larger than that. And as you can see behind rear seating position, I have about, I would say, 10 inches of rear legroom, and my feet definitely don't have any issues sliding up under the seat, so I'm definitely very comfortable back here. Now, one of the things that is very unique about this car is that you can actually get a third row option. As you can tell, this particular model does not have that third row option. However, if you do get that, I would expect the third row to have a pretty small amount of space. It's rated at 29 inches. And also it's worth noting that if you get that third row, the second row is reduced by 2 inches as well. Now heading around to the tailgate, a power one is standard across all GLBs, and it's also hands-free if you opt for the premium package. So all you have to do is wave your foot under the bumper to open it up. And once inside the GLB's trunk, you are going to find a surprisingly good amount of space. You're going to find 24 cubic feet of space behind the second row seats, and that expands to 57 cubic feet if you fold the second row. Now, how that compares to other Mercedes-Benz models, that's right in line with the GLC, and quite a bit above its main rivals once again. However, if you opt for the third row option, it is worth noting that you're going to have 5 cubic feet of space behind that third row if you go for that option. And down below, we do have a good carpeted floorboard. As you can see, it pops up. And you do have quite a bit of storage up under here. I don't know how much of this will be usable because it doesn't look like there's a floor, but it does have quite a bit of storage. And off to the side, you do have a little cubby over here, as well as a cargo cover and some lighting. Now looking at the passenger seat, you do have your lumbar support right here, and you do also have your standard 12-way power adjusting seats right here. As you can see, memory seats are also thrown in standard across the board as well. And in front of the passenger, you have this nice little area right here. Down below that, a really quite large glove box. I'm very impressed. It goes back quite a deep ways, and it is also felt lined as well as illuminated. And up top,
We do have a sun visor with LED illumination, a mirror, and it does also detach. However, it does not have an extension. But anyway, guys, that sums up all the rear stuff about the new GLB. So now let's go ahead and take it out on the road and see how it performs there.
Now before we really get started here, I just want to go ahead and apologize. We're having some technical difficulties today, so we're down to only one GoPro. And as you guys know from earlier in the video, we don't have a moonroof, so that's why you're just kind of looking at the angle directly on us. We normally don't like to do that, really. We want to keep it facing out the windshield, but that's not an option today.
Enjoy our faces.
Yeah, you get to look at our face today, unfortunately. So that was our basically first acceleration here in the 2020 GLB. No idea why I keep getting phone calls. I never get any phone calls. I just keep getting repeated over and over phone calls from different numbers. Anyways, as I was trying to say, this is just everything's going bad today. Acceleration is definitely pretty good. It really has more scoot than I thought it was going to. This engine is shared with the CLA. It's actually a different version than our American version of the A-Class, so it is more powerful than that. Now, as far as the actual numbers themselves, looking at 221 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque from a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder.
And it is worth noting that the GLB 35 AMG will be coming. That's said to have 302 horsepower, but that's not out right now.
Yeah, that will be a 2021, and that will be at the end of next year. So you have a full year if that's the model that you want to wait for.
And just kind of cruising down the road, we're going around 45 miles an hour. This is where I kind of imagine most GLBs will end up being, kind of in the city, just kind of a little city car. And, you know, it does handle it very well. You know, I'm going to say that the ride quality, it does feel pretty distinctly different than most Mercedes-Benz. It's still smooth and still quiet. It just does have a little bit more of a rugged feel, as you would expect from the outside styling. But it still is very comfortable in here.
So that was our auto start-stop system just now engaging, and in typical Mercedes fashion, it's excellent. It refires really fast, really smooth. Honestly, I think Mercedes generally is best in the business. Now, as far as the transmission, unlike a lot of the things in this vehicle that are shared with A-Class and CLA and the other compact models, this actually uses an 8-speed dual-clutch automatic transmission versus the 7-speed dual-clutch automatic transmission in the sedans. And one thing I haven't discussed yet is the steering setup. When you're going low speeds, it is extremely light. Like in the parking lot, you could turn the wheel with just one finger. Once you get up to speed, though, it does tighten down, and as you can see, it's very fast responding. So it does feel nice while you're up to speed. And like I said, it is very maneuverable in parking lots as well. Overall, it's certainly light. Matches with the theme of this. Like Mason said, this is kind of an around the city crossover. Even though it's boxy and square, it's not really an off-road type of vehicle. It's more of just something that's going to look rugged. So you have real light steering, a super tight turning circle. You can turn around in just about any amount of space. So that's certainly very nice for having a compact crossover in the city.
And with that, another thing that might be really important to you for that type of vehicle is fuel economy, and this car does very well with that. So for the GLB 250 front-wheel drive, you're going to be looking at 23 city, 30 highway, 26 combined. And then for the all-wheel drive model, that's actually going to have a little bit of an increase in fuel economy. So it's going to be 23 city, 31 highway, 26 combined. There's no penalty for the all-wheel drive, and that's also pretty good fuel economy to start with for this type of vehicle.
So overall, a lot of you guys might be wondering, why does the GLB exist? I was wondering the same thing myself. But after driving it, I think I understand. Basically, where the GLA is kind of the very urban-looking vehicle, it's going to be very sleek and appeal to people that like that type of design. This pairs the driving dynamics, the compact footprint, the really good urban, package, but with kind of a more rugged, more masculine, a little bit of cooler looking styling. So that's basically why it exists, is just because we live in this landscape now where crossovers are king, and in the same way that Mercedes has spent all these past years, filling out every little niche of, sedans, we're kind of seeing the same thing happen here. We're now going to have a crossover for every type of taste, and this is their crossover here for ultimate urban performance while still having a rugged design.
Alrighty, so you might be curious as to how this new GLB is positioned in the Mercedes lineup price-wise, and I'm going to tell you it's between the GLA and the GLC, as you would guess from the name. So for the GLB 250 front-wheel drive, that's going to start at $36,600, and then you have this one here, which is the GLB 250 4MATIC for $38,600. Now at the beginning of the production run, it does seem like Mercedes is shipping out the more basic GLBs, so that's what we have here. We only have a few options, so we have the blind spot assist for $550, as well as heated front seats for $580, and the premium package for $1,650. And then all told, once you add the $995 destination charge, this particular model as equipped comes in at $42,375. Which is definitely not a bad price point. You are getting a Mercedes SUV with, it is on the more basic end. We don't have a moonroof, but you are getting, the shell and a really premium environment. And it is worth noting that if you want to go for a higher end model, the GLB does top out around $60,000, and that can give you all of the goodies if you want to go that high. Well guys, we hope you enjoyed watching the first in-depth look at the all-new 2020 Mercedes-Benz GLB. We really appreciate you watching, and be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons if you haven't already, and we'll catch you next time as we sample more of the latest automotive delicacies.